The papers say you own the company on Monday, but by Friday payroll, debt, and one missing signature can make ownership feel like a trap. You did not inherit a crown. You inherited contracts, lender fears, tax exposure, and a room full of executives who know more than you. That is why sudden succession after death, illness, scandal, or incapacity can break a firm faster than one bad quarter. Older family business numbers are brutal. About 40% reach Generation 2, about 13% reach Generation 3, and only about 3% reach Generation 4. So when the title sounds like loss, that part is true because ownership can take your sleep, your time, and your name in 90 days. The first shock is not money on day one. It is the silence after the founder is gone and nobody knows who is really in charge. That vacuum has a name in business research. Authority vacuum, when staff look at the board, the family, and you at the same time. On paper, your shares may be clear by noon, but paper ownership is not the same as management competence by 5 p.m. A 2025 U.S. Family Business Survey found 44% said succession planning materially affected the business in the previous year. That 44% matters because succession is supposed to be planned, yet almost half still felt the pressure inside just 1 year. Now, picture your first week. One lender wants a call, one supplier wants reassurance, and one senior operator wants to know if you belong. Your first mistake would be thinking the worst part was the funeral, the scandal, or the resignation announcement. Research on sudden CEO-owner death in small and medium firms found distress often gets worse and can peak around year 3 before recovery begins. So the countdown is longer than 30 days, and the damage can grow after the flowers, after the lawyers, and after the sympathy calls stop. The next problem is harder because it hides in plain sight inside files, passwords, side promises, and unwritten deals. Research calls this informational asymmetry, which means other people know the machine better than the person who now legally owns it. One executive knows the biggest customer by first name, another knows the bank covenant, and you may not know where either file is stored. That missing knowledge can hurt more than bad luck because a company often runs on habits the founder never wrote down. Founders often fail to document things because the business becomes part of their identity, not just a set of manuals. So when the founder leaves suddenly, years of knowledge can disappear in a single afternoon, even if the building still opens at 8 a.m. By day 10, you start hearing the second silent threat: credibility crisis. People do not say it directly, but they ask the same question in different ways. Are you here because of skill or because of bloodline? That doubt is deadly because one doubtful lender, one nervous customer, and one quitting operator can pull cash out of the system fast. There is a name scholars use for the ugliest version of this mistake: the Fredo Effect. The Fredo Effect means a family member gets promoted because of surname, emotion, or guilt instead of readiness and deep operational experience. A 2025 discussion of family firms noted some businesses admitted they kept relatives who would have been fired if they were not family. That one sentence explains why inherited companies can become family theaters instead of working companies in less than 6 months. Your staff can feel that difference on day 1, because workers know the gap between a title and a capable decision. If you answer every question with your last name, the room will go quiet. Then the real operators will start building plans around you. That leads to the third hit: emotional fog. Grief, anger, survivor's guilt, and fear do not wait politely outside the office just because a board meeting starts at 9 a.m. You may be reading insurance forms at 10, payroll reports at 11, and wondering by midnight whether the wrong person survived. That mental load matters because business decisions made inside grief can lock in bad contracts, lost executives, and expensive panic moves. Then comes governance ambiguity, which sounds technical but means one simple mess. Nobody knows who is allowed to decide what. Do you hold voting control, only economic rights, or both? And can you sign for debt, payroll, and strategic changes this week? If the answer is fuzzy on day 7, every serious person in the company will notice. The board may think it has authority, the founder's lieutenant may act like it has authority, and the family may assume you have authority. A company can survive bad news for 30 days, but unclear authority can poison every decision in those same 30 days. That is why the first 90 to 180 days are not about bold vision or rebranding. They are about cash, debt, signatures, indispensable executives, guarantees, contracts, lender fears, board expectations, and the cost of doing nothing for 30 days. Start with cash, because cash decides whether any other plan survives past Friday. You need to know current liquidity, payroll runway, debt covenants, insurance coverage, and tax exposure before you talk about growth even once. Payroll runway means one ugly question. How many weeks can this company pay people if revenue stalls and the bank tightens terms? Debt covenants are rules inside loan agreements, and breaking one covenant can scare lenders even if sales still look fine. Insurance matters because one missed policy, one key person clause, or one claim delay can turn a hard month into a crisis quarter. Tax exposure matters because unpaid taxes do not care that you are grieving, learning, or only 14 days into ownership. Then check signatures because companies often depend on a tiny number of people allowed to move money legally. If the founder was the only signer on one account, day 3 can become more dangerous than year 3. After cash and signatures, find the indispensable people before they quietly update their resumes. One operator may hold the customer map, one controller may understand payables, and one plant manager may keep the entire route on schedule. If those 3 leave in the first 30 days, your inheritance starts shrinking before any public numbers show it. So freeze non-essential strategic change during that early window. No new logo, no surprise acquisition, no emotional restructuring, and no revenge firing in the first 30 to 90 days. Freeze does not mean do nothing. It means protect the machine while you learn where the belts, weak bolts, and hot wires are. At the same time, separate grief from governance. Family pain belongs in one room, but voting rights, interim leadership, and bank calls belong in another room with clear notes. That separation sounds cold, but mixing sorrow and authority can trigger sibling fights, staff confusion, and board paralysis in one weekend. Sibling resentment is not a side issue in succession. It can become an operating risk. If one brother has shares, one sister has trust, and one cousin has title, every meeting can turn into a second business. That hidden second business is politics, and politics eats time exactly when cash, debt, and customers need attention. This is why an interim authority structure can save a company even when it bruises somebody's pride. An interim structure means the capable people run daily operations while the legal owners clarify control, rights, and reporting lines. That choice is hard because it can feel like giving away your inheritance in week 2. But research keeps pointing to the same lesson. Ownership is not the same as management competence. In the short term, non-family successors may stabilize a firm faster because they are less emotionally entangled in old fights and family grief. That does not mean family always fails, because family successors can do better in the long run when they already know the business deeply. The strongest outcome is usually not family versus outsider. It is the most trusted, capable leader with deep operational understanding. Deep operational understanding means more than loving the founder or sitting at holiday dinners for 20 years. It means knowing customer habits, supplier terms, debt timing, payroll realities, and what happens if one machine, team, or contract breaks. That is the difference between a real successor and a ceremonial successor. A ceremonial successor can give a speech on day 1, but a real successor can protect cash on day 10 and credibility on day 100. If you are not that person yet, pretending to be that person is the fastest path to the Fredo Effect. The company does not need your ego in the first 90 days. It needs accurate numbers and stable operators. That means asking 6 hard questions before your first big meeting. Who controls cash and debt today? Who holds legal signatures? Which executives are indispensable? What contracts tie back to the founder? What lenders fear? And what happens if nothing changes for 30 days? That last question matters because doing nothing is not neutral when the market, the bank, and your employees are still moving. A supplier can shorten terms, a customer can delay orders, and a lender can start asking for comfort inside the same month. Now, the deeper fear arrives. What if the company is already weaker than the founder made it look? That fear is common because founders often carry whole systems in memory, relationships, and personal authority instead of formal process. When that personal authority disappears, the firm can look healthy from outside while bleeding trust on the inside. This is why some financial distress peaks around year 3 after sudden owner death, not always in month 1. Month 1 is confusion, month 6 is turnover, and year 3 can be the bill for all the weak choices made earlier. By then, the first rushed hiring choice, first ignored covenant, and first lost operator may all show up together. So legitimacy becomes the real game. You may legally inherit legitimacy on paper, but operational legitimacy has to be earned again through decisions, results, and calm under pressure. That is why the best line in this whole story is harsh and useful. Legitimacy must be earned twice, once by inheritance and again by performance. Performance begins with triage, not charisma. Confirm liquidity, payroll runway, debt covenants, insurance, and tax exposure before you try to inspire anyone with a vision deck. Then lock down key operators with clarity, not grand promises. Tell the controller who approves payments, tell the sales lead who speaks to top clients, and tell the plant manager what is not changing this month. People leave faster when they fear chaos more than they trust the future. Clear reporting lines in week 2 can matter more than a strategy memo in month 2. You also need to clarify whether your inheritance gives voting control, economic rights only, or both. That legal split can decide who picks the chief executive, who signs a loan, and who can remove an underperforming executive. If you confuse income rights with command rights, the boardroom will teach you the difference in public. Lenders also run a private test during succession, and the test is simple. Does this new structure reduce or increase repayment risk? If your answers on debt, covenants, and authority drift for 20 minutes, lenders will hear danger even before numbers worsen. Employees run a different test. They watch whether you ask smart operational questions, whether you protect key people, and whether you confuse family status with company skill. That suspicion can hurt, but it is not irrational. Workers have seen what happens when the wrong heir takes over, protects weak relatives, and pushes out the competent people. That is why some scholars and owners talk so openly now about the Fredo Effect in family enterprise. It is not just an insult, it is a warning about what happens when affection outranks readiness. Imposter syndrome makes that warning even harder to handle. You may know you are unready, hear that others know it too, and still feel forced to act certain because the title says owner. That mismatch can push you into loud, fast decisions just to look strong. But strong in succession often means quiet, patient, and exact during the first 180 days. Quiet means listening to the controller explain cash, the lawyer explain guarantees, and the board explain what it expects this quarter. Patient means not replacing 3 senior people in one burst because their confidence bruised your feelings. Exact means knowing which contracts carry personal guarantees, which customers drive most revenue, and which weeks threaten payroll. This is the point where the inheritance stops feeling like a gift and starts feeling like a machine. And it is a machine that can embarrass, bankrupt, or absorb you if you confuse ownership with competence. Embarrass means public mistakes. Bankrupt means cash and debt crush the firm, and absorb means the company takes over your whole life. That is why the fantasy version of sudden inheritance is so dangerous. The fantasy says the founder's chair is power, but the research says the founder's chair is exposure. Exposure to debt, to family politics, to staff judgment, to lender caution, and to your own inexperience. Still, this story is not hopeless, and the numbers do not say family must fail. They say preparation, operational depth, and clean authority matter more than surname alone. They say a capable non-family interim leader can buy time, and a prepared family operator can build long-term trust. They say the first 90 to 180 days decide whether the company becomes stable enough to even deserve a year 3 recovery. So your job is not to play founder on day 1. Your job is to protect cash, keep indispensable people, clarify rights, separate grief from governance, and earn one decision at a time. The first 90 days matter because payroll does not pause for grief, and lenders do not stop reading debt covenants because the founder just died. One of the first questions is who controls signatures, because one missing approval can freeze cash even when the ownership papers say the company is yours. A second question is which executive actually keeps the place running, because one trusted operator leaving can damage the next 6 months more than one bad press release. Board expectations also matter fast, because a board may tolerate mourning for 1 week, but still demand a chain of command by the next meeting. Research on sudden CEO owner death shows distress can worsen for years, which means the crisis often peaks long after the funeral flowers are gone. That delayed crash happens when customers worry, suppliers tighten terms, and talented managers quietly test whether they can find a safer employer. Informational asymmetry is brutal in family firms, because passwords, side agreements, and personal guarantees often live inside the founder's memory instead of a clear file. That is why ownership is not management competence, and why a new heir can legally own everything while still understanding almost nothing important on day 1. The Fredo Effect becomes deadly when a relative gets the top seat by surname, even though a non-family operator knows the debt, the route, and the customers far better. Some 2025 commentary even described firms keeping relatives who would have been fired if they were not family, which shows how sentiment can weaken governance. An honest heir often needs an interim structure because pausing big strategy and keeping key operators in place can save more value than making one dramatic speech. Liquidity, insurance, taxes, and payroll runway all have to be checked early because a company can look wealthy on paper while running dangerously thin on usable cash. Family resentment can also turn public fast when siblings or cousins think voting control and economic rights were divided in the wrong way. Employee suspicion grows for a simpler reason. They already know who can solve a supply problem, and they can tell in 1 week whether the heir can do it too. That is why legitimacy must be earned twice, first by inheritance on paper, and then by performance under pressure in front of people who already know the scoreboard. In a sudden succession, doing nothing for 30 days is still a decision, and in many firms that 1 month of drift is where hidden decline quietly starts. Do that, and the company may stop feeling like a trap and start becoming a real responsibility you can actually carry. Miss that, and the percentages are waiting. 40% to Generation 2, 13% to Generation 3, and only 3% beyond. If you want the next business story, watch the one about what happens when year 3 finally arrives and the bills for every early mistake come due.